How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Side Guys Football Forum. I am one of your co-hosts, Armor the Side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, we have hit the double-digit mark in weeks here. We got about 8 more weeks of the regular season. Then we're going to get into the postseason. That should bring a whole lot more fun. Maybe not as much fantasy football, but I mean, hey, still should be some good football action for sure. We're not going to waste any time here because we know that as we're getting closer to the end of the regular season, it's closer to your fantasy postseason, so you definitely need to make some good moves as you march your way into the postseason. Hopefully secure your spot, one of the top seeds, or if you're trying to fight for one of those last seeds, we really want to help you out here. So yeah, Tad, let's jump into these week 10 waiver wire additions here. Who are we targeting? So let's start at the quarterback position. Tad, who do you like at quarterback here in week 10?
You know what? I'm going to go with your boy. And I know, you might not want that because I feel like most 49ers fans are waiting for, Trey Lance to finally make his start. But it's looking like they're going to go true, probably not the best comparison, especially after this weekend, but they're going to go true Jordan Love approach with Trey Lance. And Jimmy G, barring any injury, is going to finish out the year. And I think people should take advantage of that. Take him, because you look at what he's done since he's come back. He has 5 total touchdowns over his last 3 games. 2 19-plus performance in his last 2 games. And look, I know people are going to go, well, that was only because they were 2 rushing touchdowns, not this past weekend, but the weekend before that. I don't care. You get those points however you want to. And so if you're capable of getting those 2 rushing touchdowns, even if that's not normally your thing, go for it. And I know even more on top of this, people are going to go, the hell am I picking up Jimmy Garappolo for? He's playing the Rams next week, and that's fair. That's fair. So I would not start him against the Rams. But
No.
you look at don't do that. You look at the teams he's playing after the Rams. He's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Minnesota Vikings, Seattle Seahawks, Cincinnati Bengals, Atlanta Falcons, Tennessee Titans, and Houston Texans. And I know what a lot of people are going to say is, well, some of those teams are good teams, and you're absolutely right. But some of those good teams are so because of their offense. The highest ranked defense in that list is Minnesota, who is ranked 14th. So they're playing either middle or bottom tier defenses basically for the rest of the season. And not to mention, Brandon Aiyuk's back. He's looking legit. George Kittle's back. If he can hold on to the ball, he's legit. I'm sorry. I had to go for that cheap shot. I know. I'm sorry.
Oh, my gosh.
And, of course, Deebo Samuel is looking like, the all-star everyone was hoping he would be. So I just think this offense is absolutely primed to come back and be that Super Bowl caliber offense that we all expect from the San Francisco 49ers. Not to mention Elijah Mitchell's breaking out. Jeff Wilson just came back from injury. I don't know. Maybe Trey Sermon will end up being good. He's an Ohio State product, so I'm not that upset that he sucks. But, hey, man, at least you got Elijah Mitchell. Bottom line is this 49ers offense is absolutely loaded.
Yeah, that's the problem so far. It's absolutely loaded, but it's not led to much. But I will say, to back up your claim with Jimmy Garoppolo, the reason that the Niners won against Chicago is because of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah,
and the
100%.
reason that the Niners lost to Arizona was not because of Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo had 2 straight solid games. Like you said, there's an unfortunate turnover by both George Kittle and Brandon Aiyuk, which led to them scoring off their turnovers. And it's a whole mess of other reasons why they lost that game. But surprisingly...
Namely, you guys can't stop James Conner.
Oh, jeez. Let him have
Good
a career
Lord,
day we
man.
did. Oh,
Holy
my gosh.
crap.
But yes, I completely agree. It is not Jimmy Garoppolo. He's actually been playing really, really well these past couple of weeks. I don't know how he's going to look against the Rams coming up this week. So, yeah, definitely it's not a good idea to start him. But after that, a lot of great opponents like the Texans, the Jaguars, the Seahawks, like you all listed off already. So, yeah, really good addition to help you get into the postseason. Or if you're already on your way to the postseason, he could really help you out with those postseason weeks when you get there for sure. So, Tad, you're picking one of my guys. I'm picking one of your guys. I'm going with Carson Wentz. Rostered only 50.3% of ESPN leagues and 60% of Yahoo leagues. I mean, Wentz is just absolutely playing lights out. I mean, he has 6 straight games with multiple passing touchdowns, and he threw no interceptions of 5 of those last 6 games as well. Yeah, we won't talk about the Tennessee.
Don't bring it up.
We're not going to talk about the Titans game. That's the one. But I will say,
is over if you ever mention that again.
I will say against the Niners, where he threw that little weird pass that we thought was an interception, they actually credited that as a fumble. So he left that game with no interception. So yeah, the only mark in those past 6 games was the Titans game. But still,
I blame the rain.
whatever it was, he's still playing lights out. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He's playing absolutely amazing, especially when you look at the game that the Colts had, especially Carson Wentz against the Jets on Thursday night. Like, just absolutely ran roughshod to the Jets defense.
And that's a tall order to do well against the Jets, too. Let's remember that. I mean, that's no cupcake.
He had his best fantasy performance as well of the season, 24.18 points against the Jets. Colts offense is just absolutely dominant. 532 total yards, scored 45 points, was a season high. The run game was dominant as well, which takes pressure off of Wentz, so allows him to make smarter decisions, use the play action, really get him out, roll him out, get some good passes out there. So, I mean, if they can continue to have a dominant run game, Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, maybe a little bit. I don't know. They didn't trade him, so they probably want to use him.
He's been a healthy scratch for like 3 straight weeks. That dude's he's toast. He's
so I don't know about that, but hey, Jonathan Taylor absolutely killing it. They're averaging 157.6 rushing yards per game over the last 5 games. I mean, Wentz is slowly starting to become a player that you can rely on week in and week out, because I think we brought him up maybe a month ago about being a streaming option, but now I think he's finally at that position where it's like, hey, finding a starter every single week, maybe Wentz is the guy now. And then even if you're like, okay, I'm still going to hedge my bets, I'm not going to start him every week, he still has a fantastic matchup this week. They're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, 7th most passing touchdowns allowed. 7th most passing yards per game allowed, and the 10th most fantasy points per game allowed to fantasy quarterbacks. So he can follow up a really good game against the Jets with a really good game against the Jaguars. Like, I mean, that's really solidifying his status as possibly being an every week starter the rest of the way. And very similar to Jimmy Garappolo, a really good postseason addition as well to help you secure some postseason wins if you're going to get to the fantasy postseason in your league. So Carson Wentz, really good option, I think.
100%. And, like you said, he has a great matchup with the Jaguars coming up this week. And I know that will actually cause people to maybe pause on picking him up, going, man, that Jaguars defense looked real good against Josh Allen. I don't put too much stock in that game. It was impressive. I'm not going to take anything away from the Jaguars, which I think that might be the first time in my life I've ever said that sentence. But that's a fluke game, and it happens all the time. We saw it with, who was it, the Saints and the Packers in week 1. You do that matchup all over again, even with Jameis Winston in, I don't think you get that same outcome. So you get the weird game. That's what makes the NFL so good. So don't be scared about still going against this Jacksonville Jaguars defense. I mean, like you said, we brought up Carson Wentz at least once. It feels like probably twice or 3 times before on this podcast. At this point, just pick the dude up. Like, he is legitimately good starter. Very top-end QB2, low-end QB1, almost on a weekly basis. So, I mean, I'm with you. And that's not just me being biased. I am biased, but that's not just me being biased. I promise.
No, it's true. It's true. He's got the numbers behind it. So, yeah, he has definitely proven himself over the past handful of weeks for sure. So, Tad, let's move to the running back position here. Who do you like as some of your priority ads at the running back position here in Week 10?
The reason I'm sighing is because I idiotically dropped this guy. Not because I panicked a little bit, but he didn't do as great as I'd hoped after I picked him up, and then it was this bye week, so I just said, screw it, just drop him. That's Davonte Freeman, and look, he's a tricky one. The running back, free agency pickups are getting very, very thin at this point in the season. That's why when Derrick Henry's injury happened, I was smart and went for Adrian Peterson. No, I went for Jeremy McNichols because I'm an idiot. I still have faith, though. McNichols didn't have a bad game, but that's, another discussion. So this is a guy that, while he is very touchdown dependent, I still think that is a safe bet to make. So you look at what Devonta Freeman has done. I know a lot of people are giving Le'Veon Bell a lot of the love from this past weekend because it seemed like he was the feature back. If you were watching a red zone like I was, every time the Ravens were running the ball, it was Bell. And I was shocked to see this stat. Devonta Freeman actually outcarried Bell by 2 carries. So not like a ton, but he still was the leading back. So you look at what he's done over the last 3 games, 3 straight 10 plus point performances. Try saying that 5 times fast. He is very touchdown dependent, as I mentioned before, but this Ravens offense is pretty legit. Lamar Jackson, this is the best he's ever looked as a passer. Feels like they're constantly in the red zone. And it's not like the Chiefs where it's, basically a home run or nothing. This is an offense that will drive down the field. So, look, again, it's a little bit of a risky play, but if you're hurting for a flex play due to bye week, if you're hurting for a flex play because of some injuries, you can do worse than Devonta Freeman if you can't pull off a trade or anything. So I don't love him as like if you're starting him as running back 1 or 2. Well, if you're starting him as running back 1, you're screwed. But if you're starting him as running back 2, not great. But flex play, that's a fine flex play, I think, especially one you can get on the waivers pretty easily, too, because I don't think he's going to be that high of a target for most people. So that's one that we'll have to wake up Monday morning and be like, please tell me I got him. Please tell me I got him. Like, not that kind of guy.
Yeah, the tough thing with the Ravens backfield, I mean, they've suffered so many injuries already, and then now it's at a point where it's just like, who's going to have the hot hand? I think right now that hot hand's with Devonta Freeman. The only thing that to be wary about, that's why you're not putting this guy as an RB1, RB2. Flex play is a little bit more as a sensible option, is that Le'Veon Bell may have a good week next week. It could be, Devonta Freeman. Could be somebody else possibly too. So
could be Tyson Williams. No,
he may reemerge. We really have no idea. But it's just like, yeah, unfortunately, they're sort of, cobbling, MacGyvering this Ravens backfield to get a rushing game going on. And so right now,
at this point, I'm expecting like some guy to score a touchdown for them and be like, hey, there goes Todd Gurley. I'm like, of course he's with them. Of course.
Possibly. Yeah.
He's an old
you really just don't
Of course he's with them somehow.
And honestly, it's the same thing. You brought this up with Adrian Pierce and Jeremy McNichols. They have Deontay Foreman in the backfield, the former Doak Walker winner from Texas, right? So it's like, you don't really know about that backfield either. So it's going to be very interesting, exactly like you said, as we're getting later into the fantasy season. The waiver wire is very slim picking. So, I mean, like, yeah, Devonta Freeman's a good, sensible option if you're really hurting at running back. But I'm pretty sure, if you're hurting so much for running back that you may not be looking for at the fantasy postseason, but you know what? It's not a bad addition. Not a bad addition. So I'm actually going to go with the guy. We were sort of talking about guys coming out of nowhere. Jordan Howard, Philadelphia Eagles. The guy I was ride or die with, dying on the hill.
Boston Scott, so I hate him now. Kind of Boston Scott, but more Jordan Howard.
Yeah, so this was the guy I was ride or die on his hill for last season, and he completely, made me look like an idiot.
Got cut from Miami. That's how bad he was.
It was so bad. I just don't know what happened there. But for some reason, he's back in Philadelphia, and he has reemerged because, fun story here. So 2 weeks ago, Ryan Dyrud, CEO and founder of LAFB Network, he texted me and Tad on, I think it was Saturday night, might have been Sunday morning. He was like, hey guys, I have a decision to make. Who should I start, Kenny Gainwell or Myles Gaskin? And I replied first. I was like, Kenny Gainwell, because, with Miles Sanders out, I think he's going to get more of the touches here. He's going to be more involved. Miami rushing offense is pretty much non-existent. Tad follows up like maybe 5 minutes later. He's like, yeah, completely agree with the Burr. I'd probably go with Kenny Gainwell here. He's like, all right, thanks, guys. What happens in that game? Kenny Gainwell gets 0 touches and I think 0 targets on top of that. Maybe he got 1. It was all Boston Scott, like you said, and our guy Jordan Howard. Like, for
this
the past
is our boss we did this to.
Exactly. The guy who gave us the controls.
It is a miracle this podcast is still alive. Like, he should have just killed us at that point.
The guy made us the fantasy, of the fantasy experts of LAFB Network, and yeah, we totally proved him wrong. It was very, very shocking. But honestly, it's just, who could have counted for Howard to come out of nowhere? Because, I mean, he was inactive for the first 7 games of the season, and all of a sudden, Nick Sirianni, your former coach of the Colts,
he did the same crap with Indianapolis last year, where you're like, all right, Jonathan Taylor's going to go off this year. And then freaking Nyheim Hines, or however the hell you say it, goes off for like 80 receiving yards one week, and you're like, okay, all right, cool, I'm starting Hines as my flex play then. And then Hines has like 10 yards the next week, and this is his thing. He's like Kyle Shanahan, but worse.
So, yeah, it's just like, for some reason, he got in his head that's like, hey, he was inactive for the first 7 games, but I got a feeling with Miles Sanders now out, he's going to do something. And yeah, well, clearly he has been, because over the past 2 weeks, he's totaled 29 carries, 128 rushing yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's definitely taken the lead as far as taking the most backfield touches in the Philadelphia backfield. I mean, just... yeah, I think maybe Sirianni saw something with the veteran presence with Howard over the rookie and Gainwell. Maybe, Boston Scott's just more of like a short down back. But yeah, for some reason, Jordan Howard has reemerged. Miles Sanders is still on the IR. He's going to be out for 1 more week, possibly 2 more weeks. So this is a very short-term addition. This is not a long-term play like your Jimmy Garoppolo's, possibly Carson Wentz as well. This is very short-term, made for the next week or two if you need to plug in for any of those bye week replacements that you have. They do have a tough tough matchup against the Broncos. The Broncos are allowing the 10th fewest rushing yards and are tied for 6th and fewest rushing touchdowns allowed. But I still think, with the RPO offense, with Jalen Hurts, they'll be able to mix things up, confuse. If they get into the red zone, I very much think that Jordan Howard could score. So, very similar to Devonta Freeman. I think if he could score, that could give you some good value as a flex play. Although I do like Jordan Howard a little bit more than Devonta Freeman, so I would consider him as an RB2. Definitely not an RB1, but as a flex player and an RB2, I still like Jordan Howard even against a tough Denver defense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad ad, especially because, like I said, this running back field's pretty shallow as is, but this is a very much a buyer beware type of ad because, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if he did nothing next week and Boston Scott goes off, or Kenneth Gainwell all of a sudden has a big comeback, because you got to remember when Miles Sanders was still healthy, Gainwell was the popular guy, like pick him up, and I don't really, and this is a guy who has now Boston Scott and Miles Sanders on my bench. I don't trust any of these guys. It's awful. So I like it. Like, if you're going to bet on any of them, bet on Jordan Howard, but there's got to be, I don't know if there's something better out there. It's rough, man. This is why you got to draft running backs well, because if you're still searching for that running back 2 spot at this point in the season, chances are you're not doing well. So I like it, but just be aware that I think this is one of the riskier popular pickups you can make.
100%. But hey, you know what's not a risky option? Is making a bet with our new sponsors, and that's MyBookie. So if you want an edge as you place your sports bets for this weekend, why don't you make a deposit using the promo code LAFB, and the good folks at MyBookie will double your deposit. That's right, double your deposit. So whatever you put in, they'll double that on top of that. So not only will they double your deposit, Tad, but also they're share the wealth with your friends and family as well, because if you send a referral link to have your friends and family join up with MyBookie, you will receive a 250% bonus with that first deposit. Not your own deposit, but their deposit. So that's just, they're giving you lots of free money here. It's a really great option.
Literally,
and on top of that,
free money here.
On top of that, Tad, there's no limit. So you can invite whoever you want, as many people as they join on. You'll get 250% of their bonus on top of whatever you're getting in. So, I mean, clearly it's the holiday season, so the more the merrier, Sharing is caring sort of thing here. So why not join the party at MyBookie and make sure to use that promo code LAFB. Once again, the promo code is LAFB. Get your first deposit double, and hey, bet anything, anytime, and anywhere with MyBookie. And I mean, Tad, this is a really great sponsor that we have. We made some bets over the weekend. It's a really intuitive website. They got everything that you want going on with, your parlays, your single bets, your teasers. They got some prop bets, all the various sports as well. And, if you're more comfortable betting on your phone, the phone application, the optimization is really good as well. They don't have an app, but the website is optimized for your mobile devices, so you can really bet on the fly as well. So, yeah, it's a really great option that we have. And really glad that they're part of the LAFB Network team here.
Yeah, it's awesome having another sponsor for the first time in a little bit. And look, guys, I went 5-1 on bets last week. If you want to know what bets, and if you want to make money like I did this last weekend, listen to our podcast that drops every Saturday for some of the best NFL bets you can place. But honestly, the reason they're some of the best is because of these deals from MyBookie. So you can take my great advice, their great deals, combine those, and your Sundays are going to be that much better. And I don't know about, what your favorite team is, listeners, but Amir's a 49ers fan. I'm a Colts fan. It's been a little bit of an up and down season for us both. But the one thing we can rely on is MyBookie, and my advice to combine that to make our football season even better. So be sure to check that out. And, I mean, Amir's not lying. It's literally free money. Like, how
100%.
Often can you really say that?
So true. And hey, you know what? We're shaved that for the podcast later, so make sure you tune into that episode over the weekend. But hey, let's continue on with these waiver wire picks, Tad. We got a handful more to go through. Let's get to the wide receiver position here, Tad. Who do you like for Week 10 waiver wire targets, wide receiver?
So it was funny to give people a little bit of behind the scenes look is if a guy is available in 50 to 60% of leagues, if he's rostered in 50 to 60% of leagues, we tend to leave them out because we're like, okay, now not a ton of availability there. And that's what I expected for this player. I looked, he's only rostered in 24% of leagues. I was shocked at that, but it kind of makes sense. And that's Tim Patrick with the Denver Broncos. Now, I understand why his numbers might have dropped off a little bit. Not numbers in terms of production. I'll get into that in a bit, but numbers in terms of, rosters. And that's because of Jerry Jeudy. I feel like when he came back, everyone was expecting his production to drop off, and that logic tracks. But it didn't actually happen. So Courtland Sutton, Noah Fant, Jerry Jeudy are all back in, but that's actually been good for Tim Patrick because they just suck in so much of the defensive attention that it's actually opening up the field for Tim Patrick. And Teddy Bridgewater is clearly loving throwing to this guy. He's had 5+ targets in 6 of his last 7 games. So, longtime listeners know, I look at those target numbers. That's my main stat I look at when it comes to receivers. So he's getting those targets. He's only had 2 games so far this season with 5 points or below. So if you're hurting for a receiver and you want at least a little consistency there, not a guy that will normally, I don't expect him to blow up like he did in Dallas this past weekend. I think that's the outlier. But other than that, he's consistently getting around 10 points. So I really like Tim Patrick as a guy that you can kind of lean on to be a dependable wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, or flex play.
No, I completely agree. Tim Patrick's one of those more underrated fantasy options because you have to think before Jerry Jeudy was on the team, Courtland Sutton was out for the season or a majority of the season with his own injury. And so Denver was really strapped as far as getting a wide receiver option. But Tim Patrick in his rookie year was sort of able to separate himself and become a reliable option. Yeah, the passing game was still not that exciting to begin with, but Tim Patrick was able to show some flashes.
That's what happens when you have Teddy Bridgewater as your quarterback.
Well, this was before Teddy Bridgewater. This was still
you're fair.
Manning and Flacco and Simeon and like all of these guys at that point.
That just screams exciting. And before people go, well, Manning, I will remind you how bad he was at the end.
His last year, it was not that record-setting year the year prior.
Throwing some ducks out there.
So he was able to sort of emerge himself and become a more dependable option. Obviously, more years in this system, he's becoming more used to playing in the NFL. And he's become a very solid number 3 option in this offense. Became a number 2 option, obviously, with Jerry Jeudy out. So even though Jeudy is back, Sutton's back, I think Tim Patrick's still going to get a healthy amount of targets to make him very fantasy relevant. So once again, like I said, very underrated player, really good addition. If he's available in your leagues, go pick him up, stash him on your bench for 100%. Sure.
Yep.
I have a guy who's sort of fallen out of graces after being drafted so high in most fantasy drafts. He has somehow found a resurgence here. That's my own guy, Brandon Aiyuk. ESPN, he's been rostered in 45.5% of ESPN leagues. Usually that would have been a lot higher, but based on his season, you can understand why it's a lot lower. And 61% of Yahoo leagues. Like, Tad, here's his stat line through the first 6 games of the season. 16 targets, 9 receptions, 96 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown. Pretty dismal, right? Well, look at his
touchdown.
That's true. He did have the 1 touchdown. But here's his stat line in just the last 2 games. Very eerily similar. 15 targets, 10 receptions, 134 receiving yards, and the 1 touchdown. So, I mean, he's done what in the first 6 games he's done in the last 2 games. So you can see that he's getting the more targets, getting more attention. I mean, this was a huge talking point, obviously, just what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk. Deebo Samuel obviously sort of covered that because of the amazing season that he's been having, but still, a lot of people were wondering, like, what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk? He was supposed to take the leap in his second year, but for some reason, he just wasn't practicing as hard. He wasn't giving his full effort. Kyle Shanahan was on him for sure. He was in the doghouse. He's just like, hey, if you're not going to give 100% effort in practices and in, the film room and study sessions and all this stuff, then you're not going to get the targets come game day. And so I think Brandon Aiyuk finally understood. He's like, it takes a lot more to be successful at this level. So he's putting in the time.
Wait,
he's working.
You're telling me I actually have to try at my job? The hell kind of bullshit is this?
I know. Seriously. So,
he's not what I signed up for, sir.
He's finally putting in the effort. It's finally showing. You could see in that Chicago game, he was getting the more targets and definitely against Arizona. I know it came in garbage time, but he was finally able to get a touchdown. He's getting a lot more involved. But hey, garbage time is still prime time for fantasy football players. You know what I mean?
Dude, I don't care when you're scoring. If you're scoring, I'm happy.
Exactly.
Hey, man, I have DeAndre Swift on my team. I live in garbage time.
There you go. So just like you were talking about with Jimmy Garappolo, I think, maybe the Rams game, it'll be a little bit tougher for him to score, but I think he'll still get a healthy amount of targets. But just like you were saying, there's a lot of great opponents that are coming on the second half of the schedule. Like we talked about, they're playing the Vikings, the Falcons, the Texans, the Seahawks again. The Jaguars are coming up in 2 weeks. So, I mean, there's a lot of great opponents, and especially like we talked about with the fantasy postseason right around the corner, this is a guy that he's turning it on at the right time. And if he's available in your league, it may be hard if you're not at the top of the priority list as far as your waiver wire settings are concerned. But if you are, get this guy, add him to your roster. He will definitely help you, if not make the postseason, definitely win you a postseason game or two once you get there for sure. So Brandon Aiyuk finally putting it all together. Can't come any sooner.
Yeah, for real. And I mean, I'd be shocked if you could do this, but I just think, like I said, that 49ers schedule is probably my favorite schedule of any team going into the second half of the season. So if you can still somehow buy low on George Kittle, also go for that, because tight end market's not that great. And yeah, unfortunately, I was really hoping he would suck in his game back, because I was going to try that. And I was like, stop throwing it to him. But it's worth a shot. At least see that whoever has George Kittle in your league is willing to give him up out of, caution or something. Because I really do think this 49ers offense is geared for a blow-up couple of weeks.
Oh, I hope so. So
you're sitting there like it only took 2 months. So
I know,
hopefully.
seriously. So yeah, as we get later into the season, unfortunately, we talked about this waiver wire is a little bit slimmer here, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on tight ends, kickers, and defense. Tad, I'm going to give you the first crack here. Just anybody you want to bring out as far as those three positions are concerned?
I like Cole Comet. Justin Fields seems to really be leaning on him, so I like that as a pick. Other than that, I don't know Pat Freiermuth, but he was owned fairly heavily throughout.
He scored twice against Chicago on Monday night, so I mean, he's getting involved.
Both those guys on Monday night did pretty well, but that tight end market's kind of shallow. So I guess Dalton Schultz is low key having a really good season. So if you can somehow trade for him, I think that's a guy that I think whoever has him on their roster would be willing to part with, even though they shouldn't. So I think Dalton Schultz is a really valuable tight end to target in a trade. I think if you need a tight end, trade's probably the way to go. By the way, real quick, do not trust either one of those Chargers tight ends that blew up last weekend. Don't do it.
Yeah, Steven Anderson and Donald Parham, I believe, is the other guy. But just that was a one-time thing for sure.
Don't do that. Don't fall for that trap. Because I see both those guys going from 0% to 20 or 30. Like that kind of, don't.
Yeah, don't buy the hype. Yeah, don't buy the hype.
See? Even Cap saying don't do it.
Don't do it. Run and gun. That's all you need to do. Don't buy Chargers tight ends. I'm out. For me, I'm going to bring up a name that we brought up before, Dan Arnold. With the trade to Jacksonville, he's getting a lot more targets, especially after the bye week. He's only rostered in 17.3% of ESPN leagues and 27% of Yahoo leagues. Hey, among tight ends, he is 11th in receptions and 11th in receiving yards. So, I mean, he's kind of up there. He's getting a lot of targets and receiving yards that way.
By the way, Jacksonville's going to be behind, so they're going to be passing it a lot.
What did we just say? Garbage time is prime time when it comes to fantasy. I'm going to bring up a kicker here, Randy Bullock. He's been playing really well. He recently, just unfortunately, broke a 3-game streak of scoring at least 11 points. He has 6 games this year, scoring more than 7 points, and 5 of those 6 games, he scored double digits. Only rostered in 30.2% of ESPN leagues and 19% of Yahoo leagues. So a great addition there. And lastly, I want to bring up a defense. I just brought up a kicker. That's the Baltimore Ravens. They're playing the Miami Dolphins. I know the Dolphins and Texas game was very interesting. We said to stay away from that bet last week. That was definitely a good addition to not do that for sure. Dolphins scored 17 on the Texas defense, and that's, on the Texans defense. Baltimore defense can play a lot better than that, so I really don't anticipate the Miami offense to do anything that well. So, yeah, I really like the Ravens defense to have a good week this week. Rostered only 51.4% of ESPN leagues and 66% of Yahoo leagues. Any kickers of defense you want to bring up, Ted?
So actually, while you were talking right there, I was checking my roster because I was shocked when I saw this yesterday. Was Nick Folk is actually the number 1 fantasy kicker according to ESPN stats, and he's only but he's rostered in 66% of leagues. So he's still out there for a fair amount of people. So I mean, dude, it's literally he's the best ranked kicker. Like go for him. And on the opposite end of that, I'm going from pro-Patriots to anti-Patriots now. Low-key, kind of sneaky good defense I like is the Cleveland Browns defense. They are really turning it up with that pass rush, and they are playing against the New England Patriots, who, look, that offense is improving a lot, but I really, really can see Myles Garrett giving Mac Jones a lot of trouble this upcoming week. So if you're looking for, because obviously you want to say whoever's playing the Jets, whoever's playing the Jags. The problem is, if you're not at the top of the waiver wire, chances are you're not going to get those defenses. So if you're looking for someone who might like kind of slip under the radar, I like Cleveland to have a good week.
So not bad. Very sleeper option there for sure. So that's our picks for week 10 as far as the waiver wire targets. Hit us up at all of our Twitter accounts. We're here to help you out this weekend going forward as well. I mean, we can't stress this enough. The fantasy postseason is just right around the corner. We want to help you make the playoffs, or if you're already on track to make the playoffs, we want to make sure that you can bring home a championship title. So hit us up at all the various accounts that we have. You have my handle, I'm the Side 23. You got Tad's at Tad the Side 94. You got the show handle, D Decide guys. Like, let us know about trade offers, waiver wire attack plan, start them, sit them, anything and everything in between. We're here to help you guys possibly win your fantasy league championship. And it's not just fantasy football. It's also sports betting, it's DFS, which is kind of fancy, obviously. General football stuff as well. We want to talk with you guys. We want to interact with you guys. So, we thank everyone that's tuning into the videos on YouTube. We thank everybody that's listening to the podcast, who's following us, who's listening to the podcast. I already mentioned that, but who's following us, giving us a good rating. I mean, anything and everything you guys are doing to interact with our show. We just can't thank you guys enough.
Appreciate it, everyone.